Hi, whoever is watching this. This is not the most usual of ways of doing a video in this channel. Just in case you're wondering, yeah, I don't intend to become a commentary channel. The thing is, this is my second channel actually. I do most of my stuff in Portuguese, and when I have the time, I do put some stuff in English here too. I wish I had enough time to keep doing that, but recently it just became too much. But here's what we're talking about today. Egocentrism, receipts, and editing. This sounds kinda random. Not really. So here's what's happening. This is the example that we have. There's a reviewer called Mr. Enter. I'm a fan of his, and I actually work with a guy in Portuguese who's also a fan of his. There is this other person, Rebeccah, who has Star Giant Productions, that's the name of her channel, and she might be the best example of what egocentrism is. Since I'm a teacher, I want to use the example to indicate these few things. Basically, there's 4 points that we need to address. First of all, the story in a very quick way. Rebeccah used to edit for Mr. Enter. She was then fired, then she made a video on her own channel, which was basically a review, but in the middle of it, she started to talk about Mr. Enter and how she was treated unfairly. One of the things that she got famous for saying is, abandonment is abuse. Her point being that every single person that did not want to continue to have a relationship with her, be it a professional one or a friendship, was actually doing something wrong because you cannot abandon another person. However, as it became very clear, she was just giving herself an excuse. Mr. Enter made a video, not a review, an actual video addressing all the points, where he basically explains all the problems that Rebeccah said she didn't understand. He also got testimony from a couple of people who were hurt by Rebeccah. All of that plus prints for the things that they accused her of. After that, Rebeccah puts out a video where she does apologize. She says she's going to try to do better. I would have to say that in that very video, she is already trying to justify how she would not have been wrong in doing the wrong things that she did. So that's the very first thing that we're going to have to address. The difference between a reason and a justification. Now, mind you, I know that most people kinda already understand this, but it has to be stated for the point of the video. And also, sometimes we might know what it is and forget and not really apply it to ourselves. A reason is when something happens that necessitates doing something else. A justification is a way of looking at a certain situation that suggests a way of seeing what was done. In other words, the main difference is that a reason is a priori and a justification is a posteriori of the action. So you have a reason before you act and you have a justification after you act. The main reason why this is so important is Rebeccah does not know the difference and uses justifications without acknowledging her responsibility. In other words, she does things and then she says she wasn't really responsible because justification. Now, you can disagree with me, but by definition, I believe a justification is an apology. That is, you have to assume that you did something wrong when that action was wrong to do. Then you can kinda try to explain why you made that mistake. Make it less so, if you will. You cannot pretend that doing an action that you shouldn't have done is now okay because you had a justification. That is the very first point. The second one, which actually plays into this whole thing, is egocentrism. A lot of people kinda just lump it together. If you are egocentric, you are selfish. It's not really the same thing when you are considering psychology. And I do not profess to be a psychologist. I just studied a bit of it. Psychology of education most than anything because I'm a teacher. But that's actually besides the point. The point is, if you actually analyze it, egocentrism is a strategy. Most people do not notice it is a strategy because we fall into it very frequently. Egocentrism is using your own point of view to determine what should be done and what is correct or not. Of course, a lot of people will say, oh, that's all you can do, and if you actually analyze the situations, no, it's not. You can consider other people's opinions. You can consider other people's points of views. In fact, certain things should not be done with an egocentric point of view ever. One such thing is a relationship where you do not get all of the information. If the person you're working with or talking with or depend on has information that you have not gotten yet, you have to start with getting out of your point of view, getting their points of view so you can actually understand what's going on. Now, the main issue with that is that if you forget that egocentrism is a strategy, and a strategy that you fall into very commonly, you will end up doing what Rebeccah does, and thinking that the logic of reality is her logic, or that she thinking a certain way is proof that that thing is correct. It is very much not. We are all flawed human beings. We are all capable of mistakes. The only way that you can analyze your own situation is to step out of your own position and do not look through your point of view. And of course, sometimes that's not feasible. That's why sometimes you might have to ask a friend or talk to a psychologist to understand better what the situation was actually all about, because you are too involved or you cannot separate yourself from it. And that's okay. That's part of the issue of being a human being. The main problem with that strategy is what I said. You will very much ignore other people's points of view if you don't explicitly force yourself out of this strategy. Now, you might think it's weird I'm addressing the third thing here, but I actually find I have to address it first before I get into the whole drama. Editing is a job. Again, most people probably understand that in some level, but you might have to think about it if you don't really get it. As a job, it has its own limitations. There's only so much that an editor can do, and also there's only so much that an editor can do. In other words, if I edit for someone and I get a script asking me to do something, I can suggest changing that to the person, or I can do it for myself and show them and be ready to accept their choice to ignore my work and I worked for nothing and just have to redo it because they prefer the other way. But in any case, it is my responsibility to be aware that my ideas are not the product. If, for instance, this friend of mine I mentioned, Masterpiece, who has edited a long time ago for Rebeccah, I should point out, were to ask me to edit one of his reviews, and he gives me the audio and says just follow the script, I have to ask him permission for everything that I want to change. If I don't, I am definitely not doing my job properly. Of course, that is by definition. There is some leeway, especially if you have worked with the person a long time. So you might understand that this or that you have already asked permission for might be okay to do again. Also, if you are hiring an editor, usually the reason is that you don't have enough time to edit for yourself. Editing nowadays, in the very basic sense, is very easy to do and you might do it yourself. But if you want to keep a channel alive, you might want to have more product. Therefore, you can, instead of editing 2 videos a month, let's say, edit 1 and use the rest of the time to record audio and ask somebody else to edit it. And finally, it is part of the job of editing the expectation that an editor will follow the standards of the time. That is not to say that there isn't leeway there as well. Certain things are more malleable than others, and certain things are big no-nos. For instance, it is pretty much accepted that when you need the visuals for something, however you get it, it's okay, but you don't want any watermarks from shady websites. You do not want to be advertising for something that might be an illegal product or an illegal website, and you definitely do not want the person who hired you to look at that and say, I'm going to have to re-edit that, be it because of a watermark or not. All of this comes together enter into this situation. I'm going to go over a few things that Rebeccah has said in her latest video about her abuse. And I literally let myself come record because I need to do something else. I've been watching the video between editing my own audio, and it's just a massive, gigantic ball of a person giving excuses for why her mistakes are not real mistakes, and most of them, yeah, they are still real mistakes. Let's start with that first thing that I said. Justifications are not reasons, and this, I think this is the best example to use. She accuses Mr. Enter of deadnaming her because he calls her Star Giant. Star Giant is not her birth name. Rebeccah seems to think that deadnaming is not using the dead name, but rather calling someone a name they might not prefer. This again is because he is calling her Star Giant, which is the name of her company. She herself used Star Giant in quite a few things, including the videos she edited. She would put Star Giant Productions. Not only it is very likely that any person looking at it will think this is an acceptable name to call her, deadnaming is when people call somebody their birth name to deny the fact that they are trans. This is something that I, a cis person, knows and has heard about it for years. But in this video, Rebeccah says that she just didn't know about the concept until 2020, but she still doesn't understand it now. She still thinks that you not liking how you're called is the same as somebody going out of their way to call you a dad's name that you distance yourself from. In other words, my channel, Round Review, might be something somebody calls me. Oh hey, Round Review. And according to her, this is a horrible, horrible thing to do, and it's dad naming. It really isn't. And not really to put too fine a point in it, later on the video, she calls her boyfriend girlfriend, which is to say, she might have a few more issues than just not understanding the concept. But again, this is me looking from the outside. All I can really say directly and clearly is that she does not know what deadnaming is, but she thinks she does, or she is pretending she does, because it sounds a lot worse if a trans person says somebody is deadnaming her. But in fact, nobody is. Not here, at least. Another such thing that Mr. Enter has said is that Rebeccah does not understand social cues. Now, do not get me wrong. There's going to be a very funny part of this video, and if you found it funny, yes, I agree with you. It is a horrible thing that becomes funny because it's in a video that has nothing to do with it. But basically, in his response, Mr. Enter got the testimony of a couple of people who were hurt by Rebeccah herself to corroborate that she wasn't a great person working on the team as she said she was. Rather, she was just unaware because, as I mentioned, he says she does not understand social cues. To debunk that, Rebeccah got the testimony of a person who says that she is a nice friend. That is not the same issue at all. Actually, first, what she says is she has trouble with text. When she is looking at the person's face and hearing the person's voice, she understands social cues better. Which is fair enough. It is, again, a justification, but at least one that is a little more acceptable than just, I understand everything, you are lying. Yes, Rebeccah accuses them of lying multiple times and then proves herself wrong. But this testimony, again, becomes incredibly funny, not because it's a funny thing, it's a horrible, horrible story, but it involves farting. A person says that Rebeccah helped her through a situation where her family members were farting a lot and had a farting fetish. Now I have to imagine that this is here because Rebeccah thinks that her helping a friend is the same as understanding social cues. But also I have to wonder, does she really not understand what social cues are if she addresses specifically that she does understand text less? And that, of course, she thinks that because the thing she helped the friend with was a person with a kink, and I will very much agree, it seemed to be out of control according to this testimony, that would make people sympathize more. Mind you, she will also say that one of Enter's editors has another kink. And then after saying it's like a very bad thing, she says, no, I have a problem with the kink, not with him. But again, it seems that this is her own point of view, and she does not understand that these two things are separate and different. To illustrate the point that she does not understand social cues, one of these people, Hope, said that Rebeccah said she was too suicidal, and then suggested that she was indicating that she might actually take her own life to get brownie points. Then Rebeccah comes in her video and say that is a lie, after showing the text that proves she is incorrect, and then says that what she said came out wrong. One, because she helped many times and she was tired, so she misspoke because she was speaking quickly. Rebeccah pretends that saying she tends to do that, be too suicidal, is not the same as saying that she might do it. Because stressed people don't think correctly, and that we have to imagine that she spoke very quickly, and also she brings up that Hope was crying in a video about that, and then says people fake cry all the time, to then say that she didn't say Hope fake cried, but our minds made us think of that. However, our minds made us think of that because there is no other purpose into saying this, unless of course you want to pretend that people fake cry all the time has another meaning than disconsider the crying. This same person, Hope, would have been overwhelmed by a very difficult job that Rebeccah requested with an impossible deadline. This particular thing is an animatic. Now, if you know what an animatic is, it is a sequence of drawings, even if not complete drawings. Mostly people would keep it in the line art, no coloring, no backgrounds, but she requested that this person, who is not a professional drawing artist, did this in 5 days, and this is a job that would take months a professional to do. Now, mind you, I understand that Hope probably shouldn't have accepted that, but as Rebeccah made sure to put out many times in this video, Mr. Enter has a rule that he is the boss, so if somebody else did this and he said okay, it's his fault. So if Rebeccah is the boss of this project and she said 5 days is okay, it is her fault. Mind you, there was no compensation discussed as far as I understand, and this person of course was overwhelmed and crying about it. Now, Rebeccah puts out in this video the following explanation. Firstly, she only thought about it for like 5 minutes and then took a car trip, and there wasn't any Wi-Fi, and she wouldn't try to find Wi-Fi while she was driving, so she could only really talk about it when she got to another state. It is important to notice that, one, this has no evidence. She just said that, and like many times during her video, she presents this as proof, even though by her own description, it is only her saying this. She puts herself in the center, again, the flaw of egocentrism. Two, if that was the case, she could have stopped anywhere where she could have had internet access to be able to talk to this person. It seems like it was an urgent matter according to Rebeccah's own admission that she was going to try to get her off the project, that it was a bad idea. If you are looking for Wi-Fi while driving, that is not really that bad of a thing if you don't actually use it while driving. So you could leave your equipment on, your tablet, your cell phone, see when the Wi-Fi hits, park, and send a message. Look, I'm sorry, it was a very bad idea. I'm sorry if this is overwhelming or anything, I'm really sorry. Just forget about it. Don't even try to do it. And 3, for the situation to be as Rebeccah describes, it still requires her not understanding her own position and the situation around her. What she's basically saying is, it is perfectly okay for me to ask any amount of work if the people agree to it. That is not true. There is such a thing as a person who is the boss abusing their power. In fact, she does say that about payments, Hope should have said something. It is a problem of communication from both parts, and because of that, she is partially responsible, but of course she is ignoring Mr. Enter's rule that she made sure to use for him, but not for herself. Right after that, she says that Ava, somebody who did avatars for her, should not have accepted the payment she offered, and it is her fault. Now suddenly the flaw in communication is not so much so, even though the situation is pretty much the same. Of course, there are other many things that she does, I'm not going to list them all, but just to give some examples. This person I mentioned, Hope, blocked her because she didn't want to have to deal with her anymore. And Mr. Enter accuses Rebeccah of being so into her own self that she doesn't notice for weeks. Rebeccah suggests that she has her own life, even though we're talking about work. This is people who Rebeccah works with, who she says she interacts with perfectly well, but she didn't notice somebody blocked her until weeks after, and that the actual problem is communication in social networks. Again, not understanding that maybe what they say about social cues is true. She just doesn't get what she should or not do. At one point, she gets Mr. Enter saying that what she did that was so wrong is attack somebody in his team, and she says, oh, then you were lying in this video, where he said that there was an attack from the public. Rebeccah doesn't know the difference between somebody who was involved in the team attacking someone there and the public making comments. In fact, this video is a very good showing of that, because after an hour and a half of Enter, which she had said it was only going to be a minor point here, it's very close to half the video, she then starts to respond to commentary. Commentary on the video Mr. Enter put, commentary on Kiwi Farms, commentary in many places that she gives the same importance that anything that is said by an actual person who has a relationship with her. At one point she says that Mr. Enter talks bad about his videos so she can talk bad about his videos, but for him to talk about what's bad in anything she does, he has to watch all of her videos. If you got to this point, and if you didn't, I totally understand. This was over an hour into the video, I believe. I think this is plenty to indicate that she is not reasonable at all. She wants to demand as much as possible so she is not attacked while attacking somebody else. She also suggested that what happened with Hope could have just have been forgotten if everybody else had moved on like she did, which again is to put herself as the arbiter of what is correct or not. She didn't give any value to somebody she said was too suicidal, therefore there's nothing wrong in saying to somebody that they are too suicidal. She just apologizes and everybody should have forgotten. She complains that she doesn't even know what growing around is. I'm not involved and I know it's a project for an animated series. It's very easy to know that. She suggests that her getting more subscriptions than Mr. Enter means she's right. And in the same video, she pretends her video, which is on her channel, which is smaller than Mr. Enter's, should have the same amount of views as Mr. Enter's. That's just not how the internet works. She pretends that because everybody who worked with her accepted the amount they agreed on, that means that the financial problems that Grace indicated in Mr. Enter's video never happened. That's not really proof at all. You're just trying to compare. She places the complaints about editing on Enter and suggests that he copied from somebody else, in fact saying that he copied them verbatim. Verbatim means literally, word for word. And then she puts the two segments which are not literally equal. Somebody says one thing, somebody else says something similar. Now, mind you, if you ignore that she absolutely does not know how to keep herself in check and that her own English shows that she doesn't know what she's talking about, she literally says to people who made comments that they have to be correct. She says grammatically correct, but I think we know she means language usage, not really grammar rules. No, those are not the same thing. In case you're watching this, Rebeccah, one thing Mr. Enter complained is the watermarks from shady websites, and he makes sure to call them bootlegs. But she pretends that the problem is the watermark, not the bootleg part, and then says, but you have watermarks. The two that she shows are for Global, a Canadian channel, and Prime Video. Both of them are the actual distributors of the things being shown. There is no bootleg situation here, and she is very much just pretending that she can distort things to try to convince you. That's our last point. A conversation should never be someone trying to convince someone else. Now, this is the biggest and the most distinct point. It is a reality, unfortunately, that quite a few people in the world believe. Your point is to be right. Not to get things right. Not to understand the other. Not to try to improve yourself. To be right. Be it by your own definition or by somebody else's, so you are seen as right. That is absolutely not true. The fact of the matter is, there is such a thing as things that are bigger than us. Society is bigger than us. Concepts are bigger than us. So if Rebeccah, for instance, does not understand what deadnaming is, it doesn't really matter to the concept. The concept remains the same. Her putting out this video where she mangles the definition very badly, and if I'm being honest, probably to try to sound like she was being attacked, it doesn't matter. Every person who has actually been deadnamed knows that this is a very bad thing and will say that Rebeccah is in fact wrong in assuming that her not liking the name she's called is the same as somebody going out of their way and digging what her name used to be before she transitioned. This is a major issue in society nowadays. The reason why so many people do so many stupid things is because they justify them for themselves and don't see that having a justification is not the same as having a reason. At the same time, that they only see them being right as the purpose, not getting things right, not understanding things right. So Rebeccah puts out this video that is 3 hours long, and I'm going to force myself to finish watching, just in case I have to record something else, to try to convince you that the things that she already admitted she was wrong with, and she should have been making a big effort to stop herself from doing, are actually somebody else's fault.
Olá pessoal, eu sou o Masterpiece. Vocês que acompanham Resenha Redonda provavelmente me conhecem por eu ter participado dos Pontos Contra Pontos e também em algumas resenhas do Resenha Redonda. Eu já vou dizer uma coisa para todo mundo. Eu tenho síndrome de Asperger. Eu sou autista basicamente. E eu posso dizer com 100% de certeza que o que a Star Giant disse no vídeo dela foram desculpas. Porque você não pode simplesmente falar que é um bom amigo e isso automaticamente faz com que você não tenha problemas sociais. Ela falou que eu fui um dos poucos que criticou ela e ela deixou editar para ela. E sim, isso é verdade. Eu editei para ela antes da treta do Enter acontecer. E eu me demiti depois disso. Até que depois do Enter ter feito um vídeo falando o lado dele e a Star Giant ter postado um vídeo se explicando e pedindo desculpas, eu achei que ela tinha sido sincera. Eu achei que ela estava melhorando. Então eu decidi voltar e comecei a editar mais alguns vídeos. Até eu sair por ter conseguido um trabalho formal. E tudo parecia estar indo bem. Eu ainda tinha alguns problemas com alguns vídeos específicos dela, mas ela parecia estar melhorando. Até ela decidir fazer o último vídeo dela, de literalmente 3 horas, falando sobre o, entre aspas, abuso que ela estava recebendo. Não apenas ela passou espantalho em vários argumentos do Mr. Enter, como também ela decidiu colocar um áudio da amiga falando sobre um fetiche de peido da mãe e como a Tarjant ajudou ela. Isso não apenas não adiciona nada ao assunto, porque o Mr. Enter está falando sobre ela ter problemas sociais e não de ela ser uma boa amiga, como também não me faz levar este vídeo a sério. O que me faz levar o vídeo a sério é ela ter dado o exemplo que me contratou, mesmo eu tendo feito o vídeo falando mal da edição dela. E sim, eu fiz um vídeo, na verdade 2, discordando da Star Giant. No entanto, eu sou uma exceção. Você não aceitou críticas de diversas pessoas que fizeram um vídeo sobre você. Isso está no seu próprio vídeo de 3 horas. Você não aceitou as críticas deles, mesmo elas sendo totalmente válidas. O Just Topic me criticou por eu ter feito o texto que não estava com uma boa transição ou não era tão visível. Não importa. Se o texto está na tela, é o que importa. Ele não tem que ter uma borda. Ele não tem que estar bem feito. Eu só não vou aceitar a crítica. Isso é basicamente o que eu vejo nesse vídeo dela. Só que sabe uma coisa que foi dita neste vídeo que me incomodou de forma pessoal, muito pessoal? Foi o testemunho do Yoda Jax 10, onde ele basicamente disse que fez uma fanfic de Bob Esponja com My Little Pony e que mandou para o Mr. Enter no Deviantart. E falou que o Mr. Enter não se importa com os fãs porque ele só respondeu uma vez a ele e não respondeu mais nenhuma mensagem que ele mandou sobre a fanfic. E isso me incomoda muito. Vários criadores, eu incluído, não conseguimos falar muito com nossos fãs porque nós temos muito. Nós recebemos muitas mensagens por dia. Eu posso não receber tantas mensagens, mas eu conheço diversos artistas que recebem. E toda vez que eu recebo uma mensagem de alguém que não conheço e que é um fã, eu me sinto desconfortável. E eu gostaria de responder todo mundo, mas existem casos onde eu não consigo responder alguém por simplesmente não ter tempo na hora ou porque eu tenho muita coisa sendo enviada para mim ao mesmo tempo. Não é um caso de ele não me respondeu, então ele não gosta dos fãs. Você é só um caso de diversos fãs que ele tem. Como você sabe que ele não respondeu mensagem para outros fãs? O vídeo da Star Giant tem alguns pontos bons, mas ela acaba enterrando tudo em um monte de coisas que não adicionam nada com nada, chegando tão baixo ao ponto de falar do fetiche de fralda de um dos editores do Mr. Enter, que chega a ser ofensivo, porque o editor em questão nunca falou publicamente sobre o fetiche dele, e você que fala publicamente dos seus fetiches quis incluir o fetiche do editor do Enter no vídeo, só para falar que você tem transtorno pós-traumático de fraldas. O que é outra coisa. Você não pode simplesmente falar que tem uma síndrome sem ser diagnosticado com ela. Autodiagnóstico nunca é uma coisa boa. Se você acha que pode ter uma coisa, então, por favor, procure um médico e depois fale que você tem confirmação de que tem isso. Não faça isso. Não divulgue algo pessoal de uma pessoa só para fazer um ponto que nem faz sentido. Eu acho que eu já falei demais. Esse vídeo da Star Giant é ruim. E eu sei que ela falou que gostou da minha edição e que se eu quisesse eu poderia voltar. Mas eu acho que eu nunca vou voltar a editar para ela, porque ela só mostrou ser uma pessoa que não vai mais aceitar nenhuma crítica que for feita a ela, não importando se ela é válida ou não. E que ela aparentemente gosta de bater no cavalo morto ao falar de coisas que aconteceram com o Enter há meses ou opiniões que ele falou há anos e distorcendo elas só para fazer certos pontos dela que não adicionam nada, como eu já disse. Já chega. Eu não quero mais ser visto envolvido com a Star Giant.
So, just a couple more things so I'm completely thorough. Rebeccah, who said she was one of the best editors for Mr. Enter, said she couldn't resize an image. Now, I don't edit on Vegas, so I made sure to go and check, and yes, there is a way. She also addresses that a lot of people, Mr. Enter included, complained about her white text. Now, this is something that I can sympathize a little with her, very little, because when I started editing, I used to use Comic Sans. Mind you, a lot of people have told me this is a horrible font, and I just don't think so. But then other people who are actually trying to help me explained to me that the problem was that it didn't pop. So I started to use another font that I could make pop better. But it is still very similar to that one because I do like it. In fact, for a while, I did use Comic Sans. I just made triple the text, so one was a little to the side and down, the other was a little to the other side and down, and I put different colors so they would pop out. In other words, I made a bit of a 3D effect for them, or a shadow if you will. So I can sympathize a little that I don't see the problem that everybody does see, but if you are making things for an audience, and every single person in the audience says this is not good, yeah, Rebeccah, you cannot say it's good. If you want to make the videos just for yourself, then do it. But don't pretend that you don't know why this is a problem. And absolutely, it's kind of ableist of you to say that people who have difficulty reading have to go get their eyes checked. Because you don't have the problem, that doesn't mean that other people don't. Mind you, I don't think this is really capacitism, exactly. I think Rebeccah is just an asshole. Now, the other thing that I do have to mention is she has 4 testimonies in the whole video. I addressed the first one because it was kind of similar to the point, and you could say that she was trying to get there, even though, really, it's a different topic. Then we have a second one that I really don't remember. I might check it before I finish recording this, but I don't remember it being offensive in any way. Just really not contributing much. But then we have a third one of a person who says that he is a writer, he used to like Mr. Enter, and he got kinda angry that Mr. Enter was not willing to read his stuff. This is a common issue that a lot of people seem to not really get. You might want to be a famous person, you might want to do a collaboration with somebody and everything, but nobody owes you anything. This is just a fact. You are not owed that people read your script because you think it's good. And I have to imagine that Mr. Enter has some good reasons for that, not the least of which being no time. He has to record and edit. Now, this person was the third testimony that was saying, you don't really know Rebeccah because you don't know her in person like I do, and I'm sorry, but no, that is a BS excuse. A person acting a certain way online does not mean that you know the entire person, as Rebeccah says herself in this video, but she is trying to say that her attitudes online don't count. She has tried to justify them a million times, and she is now trying, through this testimony, to justify that, no, it doesn't really count. I'm a better person in person, so you should just know me in person or not criticize me at all. I'm sorry, I don't have to know you to know that if you throw a rock at somebody, you are doing something wrong. Same thing with all the attitudes Rebeccah has shown, including trying to make a video to convince everybody and try to minimize the effect of what she's done. It has occurred to me that is also a bit of an issue with her egocentrism, that her not accepting that the apologies were not enough is part of that. It is not unlike when you see once in a while a character that's full of themselves who apologizes and the other person does not accept the apology, and then they try to say, but I'm a good guy, as if they are owed. It's another version of good guy syndrome. And Rebeccah is displaying good girl syndrome here in many, many ways. But I should finish this, and I have to point this out. Just before the last testimony, Rebeccah put a considerable chunk, in fact she has not been shy in having very big chunks of Mr. Enter's material, which I don't think he would think it's a problem, but she puts a very big chunk of Mr. Enter considering what might have happened to a person who was falsely accused of rape. Rebeccah herself not only doesn't understand what deadnaming is, she doesn't understand what rape is. She puts it herself in the video that someone corrected her that she was actually assaulted and not raped. Somebody took advantage of her. This is not a good thing, don't get me wrong. This is horrible, but it goes to the point. She takes that video about Mr. Enter talking about how he couldn't live with such an accusation, even proven to be innocent, and she takes one little bit where he says that between the two things, he might have preferred being the victim of such an act than to be accused of it because he could survive. Mind you, I disagree with Mr. Enter. I don't think he would prefer that. I think the very second that such a thing started, he would have regretted those words. But that is not the same as what Rebeccah is trying to imply, which is that is not as bad as it is. Mr. Enter does not say such a thing. She is trying to make you go there. And then the last testimony is a person who edits for her, who talks about her own situation. And she was a victim of such an act. I am very sorry that she has had to go through this. I do not understand why this is here from a person like Rebeccah, who supposedly is just trying to defend herself, but is making sure to take an entirely different topic just to make you think that Enter could be a bad guy, and then puts a testimony of a real victim instead of talking about what she went through. The name of the video is Addressing My Abuse, and she is not addressing any other real abuse, except for a very small part where she is talking about her family, and that very much sounds like abuse. Mind you, at one point she stated that she is just putting this out there because that's how she can heal, she wants closure, and that's perfectly fine, but all of the things related to Mr. Enter cannot be for closure. They cannot. They are justifications. They are not acceptance in the slightest. At the most, once or twice, she says something like, oh, I accepted this piece of advice, and that's the closest to acceptance that we get. So, I have to conclude saying this. I have not seen a video as despicable as this in a long time. I cannot even be sure that I have seen a worse thing happen. Rebeccah has shown to not understand the limits of her own profession when she did the first video. Rebeccah has shown that she doesn't understand her own responsibility, as she was already justifying in her first video, and in this one even more so. And Rebeccah is a person who does not understand the difference between making sure that she deals with her emotions and thinking her emotions are automatically correct. They are not. That is impossible to happen for a human being. You are supposed to think about it and see what you can learn from them. You cannot just imagine yourself correct all the time. Please, whoever you are who is listening to this, if nothing else, take this with you. You are not right all the time. Your emotions are important, but they are not automatically correct.